This is Nelson Lee here, and I hope everybody can hear me out there. If you cannot, let me know in the comments. I'll be moderating the comments here. So here's hoping that we have a good audio. This is a an update on Tropical Storm Francine. Again, an update on Tropical Storm Francine that formed this afternoon down in the Gulf of Mexico. You can see it there on your screen. And then on the bottom right, I have the radar loop from the Brownsville radar. We'll look at that a little bit closer here in a few minutes. Um, but I figure this is a good time to broadcast. I had to wait till the plane got down there this afternoon to find the center. It's kind of hopeless to put out a forecast or to even look at a forecast to where this thing might go until the center actually formed. They kind of took a guess at where the center was, and then the plane actually got out there and found the center much more to the northwest of where they initially started advisories at 10 o'clock this morning. So, with that being said, let's take a look at Tropical Storm Francine. Not too far from being a hurricane right now, only 10 miles an hour from being a hurricane. So if we look at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the Hurricane Center, we see we have Francine there. Uh, Pressure down to 996 millibars. There is a plane out there right now. Let's see. It's mission number 5 into Francis. I take that back. I'm sorry. It's mission number 6 into Francis. I'm looking over here, see exactly where it is. Uh, it's approaching the center right now. I have a feeling by the end of the broadcast, it will be out there. We'll get a pretty good idea of what the recon finds. Should be towards the end. I don't know if they'll get. They probably won't get out there actually. Now that I look at it, they're east of Corpus right now, a little bit southeast of Corpus. So there's what we have going on in the tropics right now. We have a 70% chance of development with this disturbance that just came off of Africa, pretty far out there, and we have another 60% chance with a disturbance that's just east of that. But the main topic of the day, of course, is Francine. Let me put something else up here for my viewing here. Okay, so with that being said, let's take a look here of what we got going on. So, according to the Hurricane Center, and we'll see on satellite here pretty quickly, Francine is quickly becoming better organized, and we do have some warnings and watches. Most of the action is going to be east of Galveston from High Island eastward. But as we're going to look at the forecast, we probably will have some tropical storm force gusts along the southeast Texas coast. But I know that most of my peeps there in southeast Texas who have been asking me about this or have a little bit of concern, but I'm going to show you why it's probably not as much of concern. So even though you're going to be, the path looks pretty close and it looks like it could deviate. Just looking at how close it's going to be, I'm going to show you why that's probably not much of a concern. So here's the official forecast track from the Hurricane Center. Has it developing into a hurricane later this evening, and then moving slowly off to the north-northwest and recurving pretty rapidly towards the north and then off to the northeast. And coming in around Grand Chenier and around Pecan Island, up there really in the most uninhabited part of Louisiana there is. It's really not. There's a wildlife refuge up there where they have it coming inland. So really not a lot of threat as far as if it had to go into someplace as a Category 2 hurricane, which is what the forecast calls for, then that's a good place for it to go into. Because if we can, as we can see, going back here and going to the discussion, they have it coming inland as a 100-mile-an-hour storm. That's nothing to sneeze at, but again, where they bring it inland, it's pretty desolate. Matter of fact, if we take off these watches and warnings here and we zoom inland, you can see it's a Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge. Here, White Lake, really, it'll travel just west of Lafayette. They'll get what's left of the eye wall, but Lafayette's a good 70 miles inland. So tropical storm force winds there, probably some power outages if it continues along this track, which we're going to look at right now. So the big thing is going to be rainfall, as it usually is with these systems, but it will be moving. It's not going to stall. So our rainfall is going to be limited. One of the neat tips that's been around in meteorology for a long time is that you can take the number 100 and divide it by the speed of movement, and that's what you're going to see as your general max rainfall in the storm. So in other words, if your storm is moving at 10 miles an hour, you can take the number 100, divide it by 10, and usually you're going to see a max of 10 inches somewhere in the hurricane impact area. So given that we're looking at 6, the fact that this storm is going to be moving probably 12 to 14 by the time it moves up into Louisiana, that's about what we would expect on the right side of the storm. So that's just a little trick of the trade to put in your toolkit there. So looking at at least a moderate chance of flash flooding, flash flood risk over the next 5 days, and generally this is going to be over the next 2 days. And you can see those of you in western Harris County, Brazoria County, actually almost have the same amount of flash flood risk that I have way up here in Carter County in Roan Mountain from this system. So that should tell you something. Matter of fact, I would say that I probably have a greater risk than you do, just because of the topography that I have to deal with. So, in other words, the chances are not high, I should say. It's a 5% chance at best. So, the real risk is going to be over here in Liz. You're very welcome for the update. Hope you can hear me out there. The real risk is going to be over Louisiana, central Louisiana, eastern Louisiana, where they're going to get that rainfall. As we always look at storm surge from High Island eastward to Cameron, 3 to 5 feet, 5 to 10 feet of storm surge over Vermilion Bay, so 5 to 10 foot of storm surge. And then we can look at the inundation here, the potential inundation. You can see that there are some 1 foot inundations around here in some of these marsh areas. Nothing major in Texas at all. Stuff that normally you can see in the wintertime and some of these strong northeasterly fetch winds that we get in the wintertime down there. But as you get over towards Cameron and as you get over into some of these other areas of Louisiana, you can see here some of the inundation, and this is above ground level. You can see you're looking at some 9 foot inundations above ground level. And then back in here towards Abbeville, New Iberia, Genere. So some of these areas down in here, 6 foot. So there's definitely could be some problems in some of these little areas, but thankfully this is a pretty uninhabited area. So if we look at the likely arrival of tropical storm force winds, we got Tuesday at 8 o'clock along the coast. So if we overlay, what are the odds of you seeing tropical storm force winds? We can see that the odds are a 50-50 chance, and that's going to depend on how close does the storm come, how far away does the storm come to you, how does it veer more offshore, does it come a little closer? So it's right now right on the threshold of impacting the coastal counties, especially Matagorda, Brazoria, Galveston, Chambers, and Orange County, and those areas like that of East Texas. So, in Southeast Texas, excuse me. So we need to, if you're right on the coast, if you're a first tier county right on the coast from Matagorda on up, or maybe even down into towards Port Lavaca, that area, you need to really be paying attention for some tropical storm force winds, or maybe one of these feeder bands break loose that we're going to look at here. So, and of course, the further south you are, you're going to have to deal with these starting tomorrow morning, midday. For my peeps in Sweeney, my peeps in Lake Jackson, in those areas, tomorrow evening, you can get some gusty winds. I would not be surprised to see an isolated power outage. Maybe it brings a branch down. But nothing like we saw with Beryl. Absolutely nothing like we saw with Beryl. And I'm going to show you why here in a second. So here is the true color imagery of what's going on with Francine. And if we get down and dirty and really zoom in and look at it, let me get me some good looping going on here. Let me see how that looks here. Yeah, it looks good. So you can really see that it actually had a better structure a little earlier in the day, and then what we call the diurnal cycle hit it pretty hard. The diurnal cycle is twice daily, and you usually see tropical showers and these weaker storms kind of die off in the morning and midday. And that's kind of what's happened here. We have the remnants of the center that was really starting to form up down here southeast of Brownsville, and it shows up really good on radar. It's just it's not as intense looking as it was. You can see the banding that is associated with the center looks very good, and that is one thing that has changed in the last couple of days. We have a lot of banding around the center. But if you look at what's happened, you see had a really intense blob. And what that did serve to do was spin up that mid-level vorticity that we'd like to see. And mid-level vorticity is just, all it is spin at about 10,000 foot in the atmosphere. And we really need that to initiate that surface circulation. We like to see a good spin, and you can see that good spin and that good circulation that's left over in these greens, and that's more mid-level clouds, and that spun itself down to the surface, and it's probably going to, now that the surface circulation has moved underneath that, it'll probably continue the cycle, and we will continue to see a cycle of strengthening with this system, especially now that these thunderstorms are starting to form around the center. We'll see what happens tonight with the diurnal cycle, with the thunderstorms that usually build up overnight around these weaker tropical systems. So one thing I want to show you, though, for those of you who are wondering, well, golly, this is just southeast of Brownsville. How is this going to wind up all the way in central Louisiana? Well, let me show you. This is the water vapor imagery. And what you can see here is this massive wall of dry air that is sitting just along the coast of Texas. All right. This is a massive blocking wall of dry air. And if this thing were to try to move directly into that, it's a no-go. Okay, it's a no-go from the beginning. So this is going to steer. As a matter of fact, you can actually see some of the clouds. Matter of fact, if I move this to upper level, let me try this again. There we go. If I move this to the upper level, you can actually see those kind of vapor clouds moving from left to right. And that is going to steer this storm. Once it moves a little bit closer to the coast of Texas, that's going to pick up this storm and move it off to the northeast towards Louisiana. Okay, there's really just not a blocking ridge over here. Matter of fact, you can look up in my neck of the woods, up in Tennessee, and you can see we have a nice trough of low pressure, and that's why we have been in the 40s. Don't get jealous, don't hate me. We have been in the 40s, even the low 40s for our temperatures at night, and in the days we've been in the upper 60s, very low 70s. It's been very beautiful. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today and sitting outside. Light breeze, blue skies, temperature was 69, 70 degrees. So it was absolutely perfect fall day for us. So leaves are starting to change. They're starting to fall. I know it's not that's not what it's like down there in Texas, but guess what? That's why we moved. Love you guys. So this is going to hit this wall of dry air, and it's going to move it off to the northeast. So and we can actually see that in our super ensemble plots. So watch what happens as we go through time. It's getting closer and closer to Texas, and then it hits that wall. And you can see that all of our models, all of our supermodels, our European model, which is the one in red, the GFS American model, which is the one in green, and the UK Met model, which is the one in blue, and then when you add them all together, the one in black, they all are singing the same tune. It is a very rare. Those of you who have watched my channel, watched my updates, those of you who have done that, know that it is a very, very rare time that all of them sing the same tune at the same time and do it consistently. So, and that is what's happened. If we look at the last 4 runs, matter of fact, we can look at all the runs. Let's just look at all the runs. Look at all the runs. You can see that they have been consistent. All of the runs, there's been very little deviation as we go back in time and put the runs onto the model runs on top of each other. There has been no tracking to the west. There's really been no tracking to the east. In other words, the trend is to the east or the trend is to the west, as we've seen in the past. Like remember when we saw that with Beryl, the trend was not our friend. And we've seen that in many hurricanes in the past where the model trends have trended a stronger ridge or a weaker ridge that was either good for us or bad for us in southeast Texas. Well, this is very consistent. So I'm just going to say that this is very good for southeast Texas. It is very not good for central Louisiana. However, the good news here again is that it's going into a fairly unpopulated area. So if we look at the GFS model, we can see that the 12Z run, or the 7 o'clock in the morning run, really takes this system, and as it starts to recurve, it starts to touch that jet stream a little bit. It starts to get that ventilation that it needs as a tropical system, and it really starts to blow up right as it moves inland, as you can see that. But you can see how close those strong winds get to southeast Texas. All right, and if we look at the European, we look at the European here. Let's go back here, and we can see that the model on the European initialized fairly well. In other words, it put it where it was supposed to be, and it does pretty much the same thing. There you go, pretty much the same thing. Now let me show you exactly why that is. Let me show you why that is. If we take this and we look at the 500 millibar heights, and that's usually our steering flow for this kind of storm, you can see there's no real big ridge anywhere. The ridge of high pressure is sitting off of Florida, and we have a little trough of low pressure over Texas, but there's nothing really steering it one way or the other. So there's nothing really keeping it from what it's going to do. But upper level wise, you can see how strong those winds are just over East Texas, Central Texas. We have a jet stream right over Central Texas. All right. And as we go through time, there's actually a little trough that dips down Wednesday morning at the 300 millibar level. This is up at where the planes fly, ladies and gentlemen. So this little trough here is going to, first of all, help ventilate the system a little bit, help give it a little oomph, help crank start it a little bit. But especially since this is what we call the divergent quadrant of the jet stream, and how we remember that is a funny little acronym. There is a what we call a four quadrant jet theory. In other words, this area of the jet stream converges, and so it squashes thunderstorm development. This area of the jet stream diverges. It helps thunderstorm development. So if you have this area of the jet stream moving over, it diverges. This area diverges. This area converges. But how we remember that and how we were taught in forecaster school, this was back in the early 90s, is CDDC. Cops don't do cops. Cops don't do cops. Now you're a meteorologist and you've learned something. Cops don't do cops. So anyway, you can see that this jet stream is sitting right over the top of us, and there is no way that this system is going to move into the jet stream. And we can see that on the GFS. It's actually a little stronger on the GFS, and we can see it on the European. And matter of fact, I am willing to bet if we go into the NAM, you can see it on the North American model. It's on all the models. This is kind of like a big shield over Texas to prevent this system from making landfall. Now, it doesn't mean it can't maybe get a little bit closer and give us a brush there in southeast Texas, but the impacts of landfall would certainly be to the east, and that is what the models are seeing. So, real quick, I want to transition over. Let's see here. I want to transition to the radar to show you what the Brownsville radar looks like. And you can see the center here. And the center is located right about there, and that's at about 24 degrees north, 95 degrees west. And if we put a marker there and then go up to Brownsville, that is about 140 miles southeast of Brownsville. So you can see a pretty good squall line forming. And that's what we see on the satellite, with that area of pretty good convection starting to form up to the northeast of the center and the north and the northwest of the center. That's what we see on radar right there, is forming up northeast of the center. So when we look at that and we go back and now we look at this, those are those thunderstorms that we just saw on radar. Okay, so as we finish this up, I want to show you what the forecast is calling for, and let me go look and see where the plane is right quick. Well, the plane is making some progress, but again, it won't get there in time. So we're looking at for Galveston, they're going for their max winds sometime Wednesday morning. I think you're going to see that probably Tuesday night. So I think they're a little bit late in the forecast here. But you can see this is the forecast for Galveston. All right, that's the forecast for Galveston right here. And 80% chance of rain, tropical storm conditions Tuesday night. All right. And if we go down into, let's go down into the Angleton, Lake Jackson, Sweeney area, we're looking at the same thing Tuesday night. Tropical storm force conditions possible, mainly before 1, and that sounds about right. And then let's see what they're calling for in terms of your winds. Okay. Yeah, gusting to about 35. That seems to be about right for that area. That's about right. So gust to about 35. And then as we get on after that, you're going to get back up into the mid upper 80s, lows into 70s. And that seems to be about right because there's nothing major coming. And as we get over into the Beaumont, Port Arthur area, you know, we have stronger tropical storm force conditions possible. and they'll be going for let's see here. They're going for gusts a little bit less actually. Um, and then as we get over towards Lake Charles, looking gusts in the low 40s, that far inland. So that's the forecast for the area, and then he let you guys oogle and ogle my forecast. Here we go. There's our forecast for the next 7 days. We got some lows in the 50s and highs in the 70s, and then getting a little bit of rain coming through. And then currently outside at my own weather station, we are 57 degrees here in beautiful Roan Mountain, Tennessee. Taking one last look at the plane. They are they're probably about 30 minutes out. They are reporting a pressure of 1,007 millibars and surface winds out of the east-northeast at about 30 miles per hour at the surface. So they're starting to get into those bands of heavier showers there just off the coast. So that's one of the reasons why they are starting to pick up some of those heavier winds. So that has been the update. I'll update you guys again tomorrow, most likely, because I imagine tomorrow, sometime in the morning, we'll be looking at a hurricane, certainly by the afternoon. So, again, the bottom line up front, or the bluff as we call it in the military, is that Francine is not much of an impact threat for the upper Texas coast. Some gusty winds, some rain. But other than that, most of the threat will be central Louisiana. So, thanks for joining me. Hope you guys have a great night, and God bless.